hopping on, I don't mind if anyone would mind like putting like with your name and just like what school you're from, or are you a pharmacist, a pharmacy student, athletic trainer, some other discipline. If you guys could just hop that in the chat so we could kind of get a little idea of like what schools we have represented and what, level are we looking at, mostly students or pharmacists also. So if you don't mind doing that, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and P1, P2,
Oh,
P3, just so we know, where you guys are at in your program.
yeah, good call. Auburn. Go War Eagles, I guess. Pacific, thank you for joining.
But you don't know their mascot, Jess.
I don't, I'm not good with the West Coast schools.
Hey Jess, hey
Um,
Chris.
like
Hey, Brandon.
flying ducks or like something along that line. I don't know. Someone's gonna like hate me for that, Joy.
You're gonna offend so many
I
students.
am.
Awesome. A pharmacist starting to work with sports medicine program. It's awesome. Thanks for joining.
Mika, I saw fellow classmates joining, so
Oh, yes. Go herd.
And Jess, I think we can go ahead and get started now. People can continue to trickle in.
awesome. Yeah. So thank you everyone from joining. If you just joined in, if you don't mind putting your school and what year of school you are in the chat, or if you're a pharmacist, and where you're practicing, we would appreciate it. Just trying to get a good sense of who we have here. And we want to appreciate or say thank you to everyone for joining this webinar. I'm really happy and excited to present this webinar to students. And I'm really proud of my APPE student, Mika, who will be hosting this webinar. Mika is a PharmD candidate and a certified exercise physiologist. She is eager to advance her role as pharmacist in the health and wellness space. From working with her the last 4 weeks, definitely can see that passion for both health and the profession itself. So it's super cool to see that. And she's really wanting to drive individuals to the next level in a meaningful and very personal way. And I think I will add that she's also looking to drive the profession in that way too, and seeing pharmacists accepted into different fields. She does have a background in kinesiology and a love for powerlifting and bodybuilding, so we connect over that. And she brings her both clinical expertise and personal passion to sports pharmacy. So as many of you guys know, sports pharmacy is emerging practice, and it's not in many curriculums yet. And many people are very excited about this field, but finding ways to get your foot in the door or figure out what is sports pharmacy or learn more about it can be very challenging. We're starting to see more and more schools pop up with at least elective courses, which is amazing. And hopefully that also brings about more APPE applications. Mika here today is going to talk about how she built her APPE rotation from the ground up. But definitely to kind of help you guys unpack like the process, the mindset, and some of the lessons learned from her rotation and how to create activities. And this may apply not only just to sports pharmacy, but it may apply to another field that you might be passionate about. Say you're really passionate about functional medicine. Some of these lessons that Mika has learned, you may be able to apply in creating a rotation in that sense. So, without further ado, we're going to jump in. This is going to be a fun little like podcasty just discussion. So if you do have questions, pop them in the chat and Chris and I will try to explain them. And before we get in, I probably should introduce myself and Chris. I'm Jessica Veal. I'm with Sports Pharmacy Network. I'm Chief Health Officer. I am a community pharmacist and I have a consultant sports pharmacy practice where I focus mostly with female athletes. And I will let Chris introduce herself. So sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. I'm Chris Potter, so I'm the Chief of Operations for Sports Pharmacy Network and also the Editor-in-Chief for Sports Pharmacy Magazine. My background is in military pharmacy. I was an active duty pharmacist for 3 years, and I'm currently still a reservist pharmacist stationed out of Tucson, Arizona. So my full-time job is in academia, so that's why I'm actually really excited for this webinar. I am the Director of Experiential Education at my university. My daughter is making an appearance in the chat. Hey, baby, I'm on a call. Yeah, I'm really excited because, this really highlights a really unique experiential education opportunity And I'm excited for me to get to share her process with you all, and I'll add my, insight into how the universities see it as well. So I will pass it back to you, Jess.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and get started. Mika, are you feeling ready for this?
Nervous, but it's okay. That's it. That's been the theme for the last 4.5 weeks.
That
So
has definitely been the theme since before day one when we
yeah,
met. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so let's start off with kind of what made you want to set up a sports pharmacy appy in the first place? Like, how did we get to this point of even having this discussion of creating this from the ground up?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I can start by being honest. I was never athletic growing up. I developed a love for bodybuilding and powerlifting actually in undergrad when I was pursuing my kinesiology degree. And after that, I had done some personal training, and I really found a lot of fulfillment in helping people take their activity level to the next step. And after I did some training, I went ahead and did more bodybuilding shows, and I wanted to take my education to the next level. And I thought, oh, let's do pharmacy. But honestly, during pharmacy school, I would always reminisce on all the days that I did training, and I worked with people one on one, and just helping people achieve what they wanted to with their health and wellness. And so, when I would study for didactic courses and rigorous exams, I would get really frustrated thinking about how naturally training had been for me, and I would kind of kick myself and think like, oh, pharmacy, like why did I do pharmacy? How can I pivot this so that I'm not dragging my feet for the rest of my life moving forward? And so I thought back and I said, well, a lot of these clients of mine were on medications, and we're there to help prevent chronic diseases or reduce that. And so I thought, well, why not have both worlds collide? And then from there, I just started kind of researching opportunities for pharmacists in the field of sports medicine, and I came across sports pharmacy.
Yay. I love the story. And I echo the whole training part as being an athlete myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, can you take us back to the moment when you realized that this can actually become a rotation? It's not just an interest or a passion.
Yeah, so I would dabble a little bit in conversations with my professors. I'm just, kind of hitting that idea back and forth, but it wasn't really until my first Abbey with Pursue Care in Huntington, West Virginia, that I got the courage to bring it up again with our Abbey coordinator Nick. Um, Early on that rotation, my preceptor had asked me where I saw myself practicing, and I never had actually said that dream out loud of being in the field of sports medicine and sports pharmacy. And so what my answer was always like, oh yeah, just pharmacy, like wherever life takes me. And their response was kind of like, okay, are you sure? And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna tell them my idea and my thoughts and my dreams, and just put it out there. And to my surprise, they listened, they encouraged me, and they even pushed me to explore it further. And um the more that I would say it out loud, the more reactions I would get that were supportive rather than um, negative or judging. And a lot of them actually, preceptors, professors, and students, a lot of them were like, oh, I didn't even realize that could be a thing, or that's a really good idea. Pharmacists should really have a place in sports. I mean, when you think about it, sports medicine, the second word in sports medicine is medicine. So, as you all know, pharmacists are experts in medicine, medication experts. And so those conversations really gave me the courage to formally request a sports pharmacy elective, an APPE elective.
I was going to say, I feel like that conversation, while super love that the pharmacist encouraged that, but like that fear and having to go out and talk and being vulnerable, like it started when we had to have that conversation with your with the sports medicine group. Like I had to pick up the phone and call Dr. Jasko and Dr. Raup and or Rupp, and we had to have this conversation of why pharmacists should be in sports medicine. And so I feel like, that has kind of carried throughout our whole APPE rotation, creating this and having this conversation with, even the medical providers were like, how does a pharmacist integrate? And like having those conversations were challenging but very encouraging. And so can you kind of walk in the students to like what was it like that first day you walked into a rotation where you knew we had this conversation well before the first day that they
Mm.
had not had a student or a pharmacist in their clinic before. They were kind of like throwing ideas off the wall, not really quite sure. So how did it feel when you first arrived? How did you introduce yourself? And how mostly did you explain what you were there for?
Okay, so I will be 100% transparent, and my first introduction was so rough, like so rough. It was something along the lines of, "Hi, my name is Mika. I'm from Musab. I'm here on a sports medicine elective in hopes of pursuing sports pharmacy." Like I was not confident at all. Like I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know what I was going to be doing, because you know we created this elective in hopes of getting pharmacists out in the field of sports medicine, especially within the Marshall community. And so we didn't really know which direction we were going to take it. We thought we were just going to start in the clinic and maybe do some some counseling for the patients, athletes or non-athletes. And so I laugh every single time that I think about my first introductions, but over time, as I grew more confident and comfortable with the team, um, my introductions evolved. And so, depending on who I was meeting that day or who I was talking to, it really was tailored to that person. And so it went along the lines of, "Hi, I'm Mika. I'm from the School of Pharmacy. I am a student on a rotation with sports medicine in pursuit of sports pharmacy. And my goal here is to," and then I would insert whatever goal that I had, whether it was talking to the strength and conditioning coach, and I would mention maximizing permissible use of supplementation for the athletes and making sure that they're eating, they're sleeping well, mental health. We're checking off all of those boxes. So it just really varied, but I will say from the first day to yesterday, the difference is astounding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did they react when you came up with these, ideas or goals that you were setting for yourself? What was their initial reaction?
Um, Typically, my ideas and our initial conversations were met with curiosity. Um, the projects that I would kind of suggest were typically entertained, but the majority of people responded with, "Oh, I've never seen a pharmacy student or anybody in pharmacy involved in sports medicine before." And there were two ways that I could take that. I could be offended and I could be like, "Well, I'm here now." Or where I took it was getting a sense of pride from it, because I couldn't believe that I was actually that first person that they had contact with, from pharmacy. And so um, a lot of the times when they would question, like, "What even are you doing here?" In my head, I was like, "I don't know, what even am I doing here?" But out loud, I would explain what a pharmacist could do. And I think it's really also very important to preface your introduction with the fact that you're also still a student. I think that a lot of them assume that I was already like out and about practicing. And so I think it's important to emphasize that you're still learning as well.
Yeah. I will echo in that sense of like, I had that initial conversation with sports med and having those conversations with the physician. It was very much like, so how does a pharmacist practice? Like, what can they do? And like once you start
Mm,
the conversation, you could hear their wheels spinning and ideas. What I thought would be a short conversation turned into a very helpful and interactive conversation where they're like, "Oh, I would like to know more about this." And you can tell me about this and peptides and NSAIDs and can you create this? And you could hear the interest and like I never thought how they could apply together. So, those conversations I do agree with were met with a lot of curiosity of like, how can we use pharmacists better? And I think as more and more physicians get out in the workforce and we're trained with pharmacists alongside, I think we see more of a mutual respect and a mutual need for, hey, I trust my pharmacist to being there. So I definitely can echo your sense of curiosity from meeting a lot of those that you have interacted with. And one
Hmm.
thing we've had this conversation on our calls multiple times about, you know, you walked in very respectful and very with that sense of curiosity and not trying to just command and say, I'm here, I'm a pharmacist, I deserve to be here. So we've talked about respecting the space and being a guest and, learning how to fit into like a team culture as a student. These practices haven't had, so you're kind of the new kid on the block. So can you speak a little bit more of how that went in the clinic?
Absolutely. So I learned that enthusiasm is valuable, but like you said, respect has to come first. I mean, I knew that I wasn't entitled to every clinic, every meeting, or every patient interaction just because I was there and eager, right? So by observing and listening and honoring what was already put in place and understanding like these people have had a schedule that has been in place way before I even, started this journey of pharmacy. And so I think respecting what was going on there in the clinic, especially when there was like 61 patients on Dr. Jessica's schedule that day, was just, I was like, let me just stand over here in the wall and let him move about. I think just respecting their time and especially their space was really, really important. And that in itself helped me gain their trust and being there and being and just building that familiarity with everybody. And that actually helped me contribute a lot more.
So was that hard at first to kind of sit back and watch, even though, you're excited and you're eager and you want to, start shouting out your ideas and recommendations right away?
Yeah. My natural instinct was to jump in everywhere, like, oh, like I know this, I know that. I could do this. And I was very excited for the opportunity. I mean, let's face it, like this was, my dream rotation, right? I had been thinking about this at the back of my head ever since I started pharmacy. And so um reading the room and being adaptable was a skill that I really had to refine throughout this rotation, and developing thick skin. And so, if the plan was for me to observe clinic and the athletes and counsel them on their cases, but the physician had 6 residents with her, I wasn't going to just cut the line and jump and be like, oh no, well, I don't think that that's correct because XYZ. I think waiting for your turn and waiting for someone to ask you what your thoughts are about the situation is far more valuable than just jumping in and just, spilling all the knowledge that's surging in your head. And so I think one of the best things to do is just step back and look for avenues for growth. So for example, we had planned this rotation to be a lot more clinically driven, and so a lot more time in clinicals. But after discussing with Dr. Veal and I, we kind of decided that it was best to look for avenues. And so after that first day, I was like, hey, I just want to let you know it's a tight space. They have a tight schedule. I think it would be best for me to step back and probably introduce myself to all the other athletic support personnel and see in what ways I could contribute and be meaningful. And so I think it's also important to not take it personally whenever they're not paying attention to you or they're not giving you the spotlight of the day. It's just you trying to find your own way to be meaningful and make those connections yourself, even if it's not what you think the rotation is going to be about.
I I think you did a great job explaining that. And I think, as we thought we went in with a game plan with, Jasco and Rupp were amazing. And like we had set out kind of this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure you get clinical time. We're also going to make sure that you get to see a lot of other departments, which I was super grateful that they were willing to help us get that set up so that you could go see, athletic training, strength and conditioning, nutrition. Like Marshall has a lot of opportunities for their athletes. And so being able to get your foot in the door there. So we were able to get, you were able to talk and get to see some other departments. And can you kind of speak to the students about what it was like to learn about the different support roles and where are some of the gaps you saw? And, we identified that, if another student comes, these are some different areas, or this is how the relationship could grow. So what are some of those gaps you identified in outside of just being in the sports med clinic?
Yeah, so after that discussion with Dr. Beal, and moving on to different avenues, I literally, like, it was like cold calls, except it was like cold tap shoulder, like shoulder taps. Like I would tap everyone on the shoulder, like introduce myself. Hi, my name is Mikka. I'm from School of Pharmacy. My introduction. Can you introduce yourself and what is your role and what is your flow? And so just opening that floor and making sure that they were available for that conversation. And if they weren't, then, trying to create an appointment so that you could have that one-on-one. And so after sitting with different departments, it just became clear that everyone had their lane. And so athletic trainer, focused on acute injuries, nutrition on fueling, and physicians on diagnosing and treatment. And so what I had found amongst the athletic trainers was standardization of protocols. For example, appropriate NSAID use and antibiotic use, so stewardship. And so those are all areas in which pharmacists naturally thrive. And so I was able to find like these little gaps, and by finding those gaps, tailoring a suggestion in a way that would be meaningful. So I wasn't just going to go there and be like, well, you guys need to, create a standard protocol for XYZ. It was more along the lines of how helpful would it be to create a quick reference guide for all the trainers to have access to when choosing NSAIDs on the road or during a game or antibiotics. And I was able to create those protocol or quick reference guides that had like peaks, durations, and what was best for what scenario. And of course, you all know antibiotics, making sure that we're selecting appropriately, and watching for allergies. And so it was little gaps like that I found where I could be helpful and create something, actionable items or actionable projects, that I could present to them.
So you did.
Yeah, no.
Good job on those. Yeah, I was like, you did a really good job on those. And they asked for some really interesting things, everything from cannabis hyperemesis,
Yeah.
to peptides to NSAIDs. They finally realized the value, which was really cool to see some of the questions that we got on how to help them streamline some protocols. So
Yeah, and I think one important concept that you've been mentioning throughout all this, right, is the interdisciplinary collaboration, right? Working with multiple departments and different disciplines. Was there any particular department that was especially open to having you around and asking you for help and things like that?
Yes, I got to work closely with the athletic trainers. And so this was my first time having access to athletic trainers on a collegiate, level. And just it was such a good learning experience for me to see how many there were in all the departments, and each sport has a different kind of take on what their flow is. And so for the athletic trainers, they were really open to having me come in and help with data entry for all the medications that athletes were taking on the road. And they are the ones that really do a lot of the prescription handling and dispensing and inventory. And when I actually brought up a lot of what I could do for them, in terms of how taking that burden off of their shoulders. They were like, what? Like, I had no idea that you guys, like, we could have somebody that could come in and do this. And so it was really neat for them to be open, and sharing what their flow was. Um, so much so that I was able to get credentials and access to their tracking system and do some of that retroactive data entry for the medications.
I was gonna say athletic training seemed to really open up um, and see the benefit of having a pharmacist and working together. I feel like that was the department that we got the most feedback and like, oh, this is awesome. So I appreciate all the athletic trainers for allowing that. One thing you've talked about, and I think it's in your personality, it's in the way you've approached this, plus in our conversations, other rotations, is this like sense of curiosity but also very ambitious. So I think that goes back to kind of this like experimental mindset. And so what does that mean for you as a student, and how can other students kind of take that and run with it, and especially that curiosity combined with ambition, kind of how does that help you succeed and move in towards in your rotations?
Yeah, so I came across the term experimental mindset. It was coined by a neuroscientist named Anne-Laure Lecomte. She's French, so I'm pretty sure I butchered that. You guys can just Google it; it's fine. So she describes the experimental mindset as fostering innovation by pursuing curiosity over resistance. And so you're using failure as data points, embracing uncertainty, and focusing on growth. So at its core, an experimental mindset is taking is combining high curiosity and high ambition. And so when you take those two together, it drives action, and every action, of course, has an outcome that you can learn from, even if you think it was a failed outcome. So during my rotation, I kept a running list of experiments I wanted to try, like standardizing protocols, offering education outreach, observing how medication reconciliation was handled. And of course, some worked and some others, a lot didn't, but I never saw the ones that didn't stick as failures. I just treated them as data points of how I approached them, what didn't work when I did approach them, and how I can circle back on that data point and push it further to make it become successful. And so that was what kept me motivated and keep my momentum and just really grow in ways that I would have never had the opportunity to do so if I just played it safe.
Yeah, I mean, playing it safe, you're going to potentially miss out on failures that you can learn a lot from, right? Not every
Mm.
success is, as good as a success where you fail and learn something even bigger. So give me an example of, something that you tried but failed.
Yeah, I really was gung-ho on doing outreach projects, education outreach for middle school and high school athletes, and it just fell apart due to scheduling conflicts. I mean, we had a 5-week turnaround time to get this done, and with everyone's fall schedule already in place, it was really difficult for me to just kind of insert myself in that Ferris wheel of schedules. So instead of scrapping the idea altogether, I pivoted into a smaller pilot version. And so basically what I did was create kind of a document of or like a mock of what I would have done had it gone through. And so I sent that over to the educational outreach coordinator just so that they know whenever the opportunity does arise again later, they'll know who to call to do that educational piece.
I thought that was a great pivot that you had, and they have the resource there if they want to do it, but they also know that they can reach out to you, and instead of just letting it fall through, you were able to pivot and make it into something very positive. So I know we have worked on a lot of like projects. There's been stuff that's like tossed out. Can we do? Can you not? Like, do you have time? Like all these different things. But I know on Monday was a huge initiative that you worked really hard on designed, came up with, and were able to execute with great success. And we even talked about the whole mindset of what is success. Like as being pharmacists, we're expecting, 1,000 flu shots. We're expecting, be able to remove all these medications and sometimes success is going from 0 to having 10 people show up. And then the next year having 100 people show up. So just setting some things up. So can you tell them about the project that you were able to lead and how you designed it and the successes that you came from?
Yeah, so in a conversation that I had in the first 2 weeks, just trying to gather information and where I could help, where talks about vaccines, and I had brought this question up to the trainers, asking like, oh, who oversees their vaccines, who does the review for their the athletic profiles, what are we doing to make sure that they're all vaccinated and protected? And interestingly enough, I had found out that it had been about 6 or 7 years since an athlete specific vaccination clinic in general was set up. And so I again brought up the idea of, hey, so how helpful would it be if we designed one for them? And I was met with some doubt and some resistance, and letting me know that, hey, that's great and all, but the thing is, the athletes are not going to go down to the student center, wherever it's going to be held. And so I mean, I could have just stopped there and been like, oh, want, like, it's just not going to work. But being creative and trying to find solutions and pitching the idea of, hey, so what if we bring it closer? Would that help? And then there was the question of, oh, it has to be a bye week because the athletes don't want to be sore. And I was like, okay, well, when is the bye week? And so it was really taking each question and each type of resistance that they were throwing and coming up and turning it around and say, well, what about this? Finding solutions and offering those solutions and being persistent about it. And so what had ended up happening was I brought the idea up to the School of Pharmacy, and lo and behold, Walgreens, shout out to Walgreens, on Hal Greer, they had actually given a grant to Marshall School of Pharmacy, a wellness grant, and that included doing a flu shot clinic. And so they were able to help and assist with providing the vaccinations on the day that worked for the athletic department. And so it was funny because after the fact, I had talked to Dr. Veal about it, and I was like, yeah, we had X amount of students. But then she made me realize, like, hey, that is like X amount of students more than they've had in the last 6, 7 years. So, well, yeah, you know what? A win is a win. And so I'm actually really proud that I was able to offer solutions to each step of resistance that I was met with in designing that project.
You did a great job, and I was super excited to hear that you even like some of the resistance of, getting able to pivot when an athletic trainer said, "Hey, we can't get over there," and like moving the clinic a little bit to get a couple more athletes. So you did an amazing job, and I can't wait to see how it grows in the coming years. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say it too. One of my duties as a reserves pharmacist is actually planning the flu pod for the base that I'm at. And organizing a vaccine clinic like that takes a lot of logistics, a lot of planning, a lot of support, a lot of people all operating together to accomplish one goal. So kudos to that. And I mean, it's a huge undertaking. So how did you feel about initiating something so big and important like this as a student?
Very daunting, very scary, and honestly, a lot of the times I was like, well, this is bigger than me. I don't know. I'm in way over my head. But it's really setting goals and projects um, really came into fruition because I was able to do daily check-ins with Dr. Beal. And so I set up the system where I would write down all the conversations and all the ideas and potential projects on a document that I would then update with Dr. Beal. And just to let you guys know, this was a remote rotation. So I did not get FaceTime with Dr. Beal all the time. And so that was my system and my way of like, hey, checking in, this is what's going on. And I think what was really important was Dr. Veal had asked me what my learning style was and how I learned best. And I had already disclosed to her that I learn best when I have feedback, consistent feedback, and I can turn around and fix it almost immediately. And so by doing those daily check-ins and pitching these ideas and doing it step by step and coming back at the end of the week to review where we are at with each project, that really helped me kind of pace myself as more and more got added on to my plate.
Yeah. You did an amazing job, and it was fun, having as a student, and like we had planned beforehand. I have remote students, and I have like a syllabus of like what we can do if everything goes awry, but the opportunities presented here were super cool. And the fact that we were able to get into sports medicine clinic, we were able to get into the athletic department. And I know most people on the call probably kind of have some type A personality and like some structure, like to know what's going on. And we had that. We had something set up, but we had goals, and we had discussed those beforehand. And I think as a preceptor, I had to look at sometimes larger goals. It wasn't just about having you accomplish X, Y, and Z, because we had to pivot. There were some opportunities throughout the whole rotation that presented themselves that were things that you had to take advantage of. And I thought you did an amazing job of going out and saying, hey, this opportunity presents it. How do you think I should handle it? What should I do? And like being very communicative to me about what's going on. And so kind of talk to the students, like you have a plan, but then sometimes amazing opportunities present themselves and chances that you might not get. So how did you balance? How did we kind of work through this, like this plan that we had, but then how did these pivots happen? How did you feel? How did you handle it? Kind of walk through that.
Yeah. So as the rotation went on, I built more connections, and my days suddenly went from like two things to just back to back to back to back to back. And I was like, what is going on here? So it felt like I started out juggling 2 bowling ball pins, and then suddenly I was like juggling 10.
Yeah.
And so a big part of that is timing that I've learned, and that next steps on a project doesn't happen at once. So you could pitch something on week 1 and week 2 and not hear back until week 4, when now you've already have 5 things in motion. So there were definitely days that I had to hit pause on certain projects, but I made it again a priority to communicate with Dr. Veal, and she just gave me the reassurance that I needed to take opportunities as they come, because projects will always be there on the background, but like these meetings that you are able to have with certain pharmacists, certain athletic support personnel, those are so valuable. So much more valuable, I would say. And honestly, having a structure that let me check in with her every week, kept me grounded. And like, she reminded me that feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you're failing. It just means that you're growing. So for example, I had all these projects, but then as I got to build a relationship with the athletic training team, I had realized that they were wanting to transition into something bigger with Marshall Pharmacy. And so I have been starting to facilitate a bigger connection with them. And it's really just about what you can do in the moment and striking while the iron is hot. So
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, did you ever feel overwhelmed while you were on this rotation?
Never with me, Chris.
I
Never.
know, of
Never
course
feel
not.
overwhelmed on rotations with me. They're all just kidding.
oh yeah, always overwhelmed, but it wasn't anything that I just like couldn't take on. And just being honest, and like we would get on a call and be like, listen, I'm behind on XYZ protocol. I've got like 5 meetings scheduled that I just agreed to like yesterday, and it's today. So and just being flexible, honestly, being flexible and knowing that you have to adapt with everybody else's schedule. And that goes back to respecting their time. You're the one asking for an appointment. You're the one asking for a meeting. So take those meetings when they say, hey, yeah, this is my availability.
Yeah. And I think you did a great job of that and communicating and kind of us being able to juggle what is truly a priority, what can wait, and if we have to have something wait, not leaving that person hanging, but can we
Mm,
pivot and make it into something still usable? Maybe they wanted a presentation and then said, "Hey, can we give you a handout? I can get back to you. Maybe the next student can do a presentation, but I can at least get you that." So sometimes it was scaling down the projects that we had
mm.
and, being able to come up with creative solutions so that you still met their needs, and you weren't just leaving them hanging, but you were able to give them something to walk away with. They left with a very positive experience, and they're like, "Hey, pharmacy can offer more." And sometimes that is what we were looking for because you only had so many hours in a day and so many weeks in this rotation. So,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yes, yes.
yes.
I
So,
realized that very quickly that 5 weeks is not a long time.
no, definitely not. So, looking back, would there be something you did differently in this rotation or some way you would have handled stuff differently? Any thoughts on that looking back?
Yeah, I realized like end of week one, beginning of week two, that no one was going to network for me or hand me like just like a magic list of contacts. Like, hey, talk to this person if you want XYZ. And so I wish that I had been more proactive that very first week, introducing myself, being a little bit more aggressive and exchanging my information, and setting up meetings right away. So it took me a solid 2 weeks before I was really pitching ideas and gaining traction. And that was an example of me letting my curiosity dampen my ambition. Um, I was curious, but I wasn't aggressive enough, I think, in networking. And so, if I could do it again, I'd lead with both from the very start, being ambitious and curious. And so, I think the biggest takeaway is the sooner you build those connections, the sooner you can foster and grow those ideas.
So yeah, rotations are pretty quick turnaround time depending the school you're at, sometimes 4 weeks, 6 weeks. If you had extra time at this site, what else would you do? What else would you be trying to accomplish?
Finishing those projects, starting maybe some more and finishing the ones that are still pending. So what I will say is that I still have some projects underway that I do plan on finishing. And even if they get finished a week after this rotation ends, I'm still very proud to submit that and present it to whoever I'm submitting it to, because I want to make sure that I'm following through with them. And I also want to make sure that it is a well-produced document or presentation, whatever it is. So I think if I had more time, I would do all the things and do all the projects and make sure that they are well written and well produced.
It, is there a skill that you found valuable in helping make this rotation go quickly or smooth, and not quickly, but more smoothly, and that you really felt like opened doors for you as a student? Is there some skills or soft skills that, are really helpful going into rotations?
Yeah, so the theme I think that I've been mentioning is adaptability and learning how to read the room. So especially in sports medicine and with all the athletes. For example, when I spent time with football, the athletic trainers were obviously very incredibly busy, and me just standing there against the wall, like pinned up against the wall, holding my breath, was not going to help anyone, like at all. And just like staring and like looking around. So what I did notice, instead of just standing there, I started to observe the flow, and I did notice that there was like a stack of handwritten logs of dispensed medications on game day. And so when I inquired what that was about, what their system was, and how they get that information to their tracking system, they were like, "Yeah, we're just this is what we're burdened with." And so I think learning the gravity and depth of somebody's burden before offering just like a random solution is really important, and being able to read the room and being like, okay, I don't need to be just standing here waiting to be told what to do, but instead, read the room and take some initiative.
Yeah. I think that kind of leads me into another question that kind of to sum up some of the rotation is like, how do you think, we went in with this perception of like, what can pharmacists do? Why are you guys here? A little bit of like curiosity of like, how can you help? How do you think after the 5 weeks, do you think this changed? I know from conversations that we've had and conversations from other people, the perception has led to a lot of bigger things, but how do you think the overall staff's perception has changed in the departments altogether?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, there were two comments that I really hold near and dear to my heart. One was at the end of a conversation, they had admitted to me that, I didn't know what this conversation was going to be about and how it was going to go, but this is a very, very valid and great dialogue that we're having. And then the second one was really asking how they could further foster the relationship with pharmacy and how they could include pharmacy and pharmacists in handling these prescriptions and maybe offering guidance on supplements and looking at athletes and their profiles and females with reds and how we can help these deficiencies and support them that way.
So what advice would you give to a P4 or a P3, an accelerated program, or even P2s, P1s already thinking ahead, who
Mm.
wants to carve out, a unique APPE rotation? Maybe their school doesn't already have one in sports pharmacy, but they want it, right? So what advice would you give to them?
I believe that a lot of students in pharmacy school are introverts and kind of shy. I'm believe it or not, I am pretty shy. But honestly, have the audacity. Like, have the audacity. I struggled in several didactic courses, and because of that, I convinced myself that I didn't have the right to ask for something different than everyone else. But listen, if you made it this far in pharmacy school, you're standing in the same space as everyone else that has a 4.0. So, you belong there. Have the audacity. If you have an idea for a rotation that doesn't exist yet, just put it out there because I bet the next breakthrough rotation will come from a student just willing to ask that question or willing to put it out there. You really only need one person to say yes, and just putting it out there and having that one person can completely change the trajectory of your career.
I'll definitely say it was for you. I feel like Nick was a huge person to
Mm,
believe in that and set up, reach out um, and just hearing you talk about that, like you're all there together. You deserve to be there. I constantly tell like people, like, even my high school kids, like you are enough. You're valid to be there, and I think that's really important. I do want to touch on something that's also very hard as pharmacists to hear, and the fear of hearing no. Like, how does
mm.
advice do you have for students? Because there are times in you're met with like maybe that door closes because they don't have the time or the space. I know we talked a lot about the Mel Robbins theory and the like, let them be. Sometimes that's not right now, okay, but can you talk a little bit about how you faced, because I know you didn't like hearing no sometimes, and how did you face that for the students? Because it will happen occasionally.
Yeah, no, I at first I had a hard time hearing no, but now it's grown to like, okay, challenge accepted, done. But no, it's real. The fear of hearing no is very real. I felt it. I still feel it at times, but again, it's not failure, it's just feedback. And so every time you pitch an idea or every time you make a recommendation to a provider and they're like, nah, next, you're like, okay, fine. And then move on. You're not going to only have one physician that you're going to make recommendations to. You're not going to only have these moments in times, these blips in times that you have the ability to show what you can do as a pharmacist. And so if you get 100 no's, that doesn't mean you're never going to get a yes. You're just waiting for that yes. Like it really has nothing to do with the amounts of yeses that you can possibly get. And so I think um, I mean, I still get goosebumps thinking back about the moment when I sent that email request for a sports pharmacy APPE, because that was the exact moment that I decided to lean on the chance of getting a yes than letting myself be paralyzed by the fear of no. And like, look where we are. So, really, I think, yeah, there's a chance of having the reaction be a no, but what about all the opportunities and all the chances that you could have when it's a yes?
Yeah. I love that because sometimes, we always sometimes think about the worst case scenarios, but sometimes you have to also think it's okay to think about the best case scenario. And the best case
Hmm.
in this situation was you probably thought there may be a no, but it turns out, lo and behold, Nick was able to work it out. I was able to say yes. We were able to get Jasco and the whole Marshall.
Yeah.
There were so many yeses that happened that was super cool. So I love seeing, like, even I was kind of like, oh, how's this going to go with Marshall Health? And they were like, yes. And I was like, oh, fantastic. I
Yeah.
love the idea.
Yeah.
So
And like even throughout the rotation, you'll pitch an idea or you'll pitch a project or a recommendation, and some people will just be all on your team, and others will just be like, yeah, cool, moving on. And that has nothing to do with you, personally. That has everything to do with um, their schedule and what their interests are. So I mean, just move forward, keep it moving.
yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so go ahead, Chris. No, you're
Oh,
good.
I was just going to add, this is really important too for those students we were talking about that are interested in this opportunity, but it doesn't currently exist at their school, right? So, some universities are very willing to let their students be proactive and go out there and, hey, just ask. And if somebody says yes, we'll take it from there for you, right? So that's
Hmm.
how my university is. If a student wants some unique rotation that we don't offer yet, they're definitely allowed to go and, have a conversation with that potential preceptor. And if they say yes, we'll take it from there. I've got a student who wants to do a rotation at the Miami Zoo. Never even crossed my mind, right? But we said, yeah, sure, go for it. And it sounds like they're saying yes. So we're going to get that going. So, if you are a student that is interested in this opportunity, definitely take Mika's advice and don't be afraid to say no. Seek out those sports medicine clinics, providers, and just ask the question. The worst they can do is say no, and you move on to the next one, right? But one caveat that I did want to provide, as someone in experiential education, is talk to your school's experiential education department first, because some schools do want to play more of the intermediary role and kind of be the middleman for you instead of just letting you out into the wild. Every school is different. So just make sure you have those conversations with them first and see what their policies and procedures are like.
Yeah, that's super helpful, Chris. And I've worked with a couple different schools and they all do handle it slightly differently.
Hmm.
But I will say all of them have been great schools to work with. So as a preceptor, it's been fun. So um, I want to challenge you, Mika, on this last question. And
Yes.
you, in the very beginning, said, you threw it out there to just do a sports pharmacy rotation. So and we're going to throw this out there and what dream big, what is your dreams, like, do you see yourself working in sports pharmacy? How do you see that coming about? I know you're getting ready to graduate soon, so what's your dreams?
Well, I definitely see myself being involved in sports pharmacy as much as I can. And just like tying it back with my exercise physiology background, kinesiology, I know that it will be part of my career forever. Although it may not be the traditional full-time role right away, I know that I have the capacity to develop it as the years come, and all the experiences that may come with it. And so I see myself contributing to and collaborating with sports medicine teams and wellness programs, or even research into supplemental safety and performance. But of course, not limited to athletes. It's just I find so much fulfillment working with anybody wanting to be more active, or taking their wellness and health to the next level.
Yeah, I think yay, I'm excited to see where you go, and I'm super excited to be your preceptor, so thank you for letting me have that
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you for having me as a student. It's been so
Of
much fun.
Of course. So I mean, I think in the end, we kind of want to tie this back to We're seeing a lot of innovation in pharmacy. We're seeing it become not just a product dispensing anymore. It is now truly a service, wellness space. We're seeing a lot of very unique and innovative fields and practices come out of pharmacy. And, as Chris talked to, they have somebody that wants to do it at the zoo. And, maybe there's, like I said, functional medicine or sports medicine. And, a few years ago, doing pharmacogenomics rotations were kind of innovative. So now it's becoming more mainstream. So I think it's really important that, the students can create their own pathways out there. And so that is really cool to see as a pharmacist that's been in the field for 15 years, seeing these new careers and being like, I missed out. I wish I had that when I was a kid. But I also think you spoke to the thing of like a lot of us as sports pharmacists have created this in non-traditional ways. We've all had to build, all had to work on it. Nothing has been like just like, hey, these are the check boxes you have to get and you get a job in sports pharmacy. It has been something that we've all had to work hard at, spend hours outside. All of us have other jobs, and so being able to know that, you're not going to walk in and just have it handed to you. You do have to do the work. You have to be curious. You have to network. All the different things you spoke about are really important. So, Chris, you have anything to add at the end?
No, no, I don't. I'm gonna, just because we're running a little short on
Yeah.
time, I'm gonna get to some of the audience questions now. So the first one was a while back in the chat. Lauren asked, where was the rotation completed at, and how did you go about setting it up if the experiential education office didn't have any contacts for it?
The rotation was held at the Marshall University Sports Medicine Institute in Huntington, West Virginia, and Nick Adams was the APPE coordinator who helped handle all of it. Um, he was able to contact Dr. Jessica Veal and kind of throw that idea out there. And my job as a student was to be persistent and respectfully asking what the where the timeline was going and where we were at in that transition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Question from Nancy is, when you requested the APPE rotation, did the school look for it and set it up for you, or did you lead them to that site that you mentioned? And how did you prepare for this specific APPE rotation? Brushing up on certain topics, etc.
Yeah, so I explained a little bit about how we got the rotation together, but in terms of brushing up on topics, yes, I was able to get some information and resources from Dr. Veal, thank God, about medications that are specific to a lot of athletes, and just reading up on that and becoming familiar with the protocols that they have to adhere to.
Yeah.
Question from Jonelle. What did you do pre-rotation? I guess this is kind of the same thing. What did you do pre-rotation to prepare any pharmacotherapy review? And is there anything you wish you would have reviewed prior?
I wish I had reviewed soft skills, actually, soft skills, and because I mean, you've gone through how many years of pharmacy school? It's a lot of it's already in here. I think because starting out in new rotations and novel rotations, you kind of have to do a lot more talking and networking. And so I wish I honestly, soft skills, I wish I had reviewed soft skills or honed in on that a little bit more.
I will speak to some of this stuff that I gave you ahead of time. Like we made sure you were well versed in like what are the medicines we see most likely in athletes. We went through the USADA's Health Pro Advantage course, so you understood what is the WADA prohibited list. We went through drug-free sport and what is the NCAA prohibited list. What is the medical exemption? Some of the terminology that you would see in a sports pharmacy rotation that they do not discuss in pharmacy school. So we did, I gave a lot of those resources in the very beginning, so that when Mikka was in, when they talked about, hey, this is prohibited. What does that mean? Where do I find that list? So some of those are things that we don't discuss in school. And I was able to get that to Mikka before the rotation started, so she had time. And we also went through and discussed after having conversations with the sports med doctors that she'd be working under, what are they seeing mostly in the clinic? So he was mostly shoulders and upper arm. So we were able to determine, he was saying, I do a lot of steroid injections and I see a lot of NSAIDs. He was the one that also said, I have a lot of questions on peptides. And so we were able to use some of that, like, and help. I was able to get Mikka resources on peptides so she knew what he was asking about, or he ended up wanting a resource because he didn't know what they were. So, so that they could help them and their physicians understand and have a better conversation with with their patients. So that was some of the stuff we did ahead of time to prepare for a sports pharmacy rotation.
All right, and it looks like the last question in the chat is from Lexi. Do you feel like you would have to do a residency to make a career out of sports pharmacy? Was your clinic, I'll let you answer that one first. They kind of have a three-part question in there, so I'll let you answer that part first.
Do I feel like I would have to do a residency to make a career? I don't believe that it's necessary to make a career out of sports pharmacy. I mean, take a look at our hosts today. Really, because it's so novel, there are so many avenues to it, and I think taking advantage of those avenues, just like I'm taking advantage of this elective that I could have, and networking and building off of that, I think is a great way to do sports pharmacy and making a career out of it.
And then the second part of their question is, was your clinic primarily through Marshall's athletics, or did you directly work just within the athletic department? Did you work with all sports and athletes, or did it depend on the time of year you were there?
All of the above. So the athletic department was tied within the Marshall University Sports Medicine, within the Marshall Health Network, and so I was able to go to most of the trainers and have conversations with them, because athletes, if they're not in season, they're off season and they're still training. So I was able to see what that was like with all the teams.
Awesome. Well, I'll just take one more question that just popped up and then we'll wrap this up. So the last question then is, do you think this is a developing field here in the Huntington area? How many projects did you set up and how many athletes responded to having a pharmacist on their staff? Or I guess, did you hear any feedback directly from the athletes about you being a pharmacist?
Yeah, actually the athletes actually were able to ask me some really good questions regarding their supplement use whenever I was there. So I think being present in the athletic training halls and rooms was very helpful for them, and they were able to just ask me, while they were getting treatment, about their own personal supplement use and their own health conditions. Developing field in the Huntington area, I would say it's a developing field worldwide, to be honest with you. And we were just lucky enough to have this opportunity in Huntington, West Virginia. The number of projects set up, I couldn't count. I couldn't count. I'm sorry. There's
I
a
don't know
lot.
either. I
Yeah,
don't know. A lot.
a lot.
And there's a lot. I feel like there was a lot. We could probably have a student for the rest of the year and consistently, and those would continue to grow and develop, and more projects would come. I definitely feel like there's not a shortage of product projects for pharmacists entering into the NCAA athletic space and athletic
Mm.
departments. I think we identified a ton of areas, and looking forward to having conversations with Marshall Pharmacy School and Marshall Athletics afterwards about just how does this continue to grow and not just be something else, because there was so many things identified as ways that pharmacists can make impacts into the athletic department.
Yeah, well, that about ends our time with you all today. But thank you everyone so much for joining the call. Thank you, Mikka, for sharing your experience, your wisdom now that you've gained during this rotation. And thank you, Jess, for being a great preceptor, helping her set this up, and also for being the co-host on today's call. Mikka, I think if you want to share your information either in the chat, or I can share it with everyone afterwards via email if you want to. Oh, it's already there. So Mika's contact info is in the chat. If anyone has any follow-up questions that we didn't get to today, me and Jess's information is on the Sports Pharmacy Network's website, sportsrxnetwork.com. We have student membership available on the website that has a lot of great resources for students. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to any of us. Thank you again, everyone, for joining the call tonight. We will be closing the Zoom chat shortly. All right, Jess, I think you can stop recording.
Okay, how do I do that?
And shut it down whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
But thanks, Mikka.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mikka. to figure out how do I stop recording? Oh, there it is.